Hey guys, let me ask you a question. What could really change if you gave yourself 2 focused hours a day? Not 10, not your entire evening, not even a weekend, okay? Just 2 hours. Because one of the biggest decisions I ever made did not begin with quitting my job. It did not begin with making a lot of money, and it definitely did not begin with knowing exactly what I was doing. It began with a decision. I decided to make a commitment to myself, 2 focused hours a day. That was it. And honestly, I know that probably doesn't sound life changing, but let me explain why it was. Now, for years, I was used to giving the best hours of my day to somebody else, right? I worked long shifts. I did the nights, the weekends, holidays, sometimes 40 hours a week, sometimes 60, and sometimes even more. I would come home tired with very little energy left for myself, for my wife, or the life I was supposedly working so hard to build. Now, maybe you understand that feeling, right? You wake up, you go to work, you deal with traffic, you handle the problems all day long. You come home exhausted, you eat, you sit down for a few minutes, and before you know it, the day is over. Then you do it again and again and again. You keep telling yourself, someday I will have more time. Someday things will slow down. Someday I will finally start working on something for myself. But guys, someday is not a date on the calendar. And if you're not careful, someday can turn into 5 years, 10 years, or even longer. That is what I had to realize. Okay, I did not need to find more time. I needed to decide what some of my time was going to be used for. Now, there is a big difference because most of us have been trained to give our time away first and keep whatever is left for ourselves. But usually there's nothing left. No energy, no focus, no motivation. That is why I made the 2 hour decision. I was going to take 2 focused hours a day and use that time to build something for my future. Not scroll on my phone, not watch another television show, not sit down thinking about what I should do. 2 hours with a purpose. I use that time to learn, to create content, to answer questions, to understand digital marketing, to build systems, and to allow automation to handle many of the repetitive tasks. Now, I want to be clear. 2 hours a day does not mean everything happens overnight. Okay. It does not mean you press a button and suddenly your life changes. That is not how real business works. But 2 focused hours can create momentum, and momentum can change everything. Think about this. 2 hours a day may not seem important, right? 2 hours tomorrow may not feel important either. But when you do it day after day, week after week, month after month, you're no longer just thinking about change. That is the part most people miss. They are waiting to feel ready. They are waiting for that perfect moment. They're waiting until life becomes less busy. But life rarely becomes less busy on its own. You have to decide that your future deserves a place on your calendar. Because when something matters, you schedule it. You schedule work, you schedule your appointments, right? You schedule meetings, you schedule everything everybody else needs from you. But when was the last time you scheduled time for the person you're becoming? Now, that question changed how I looked at my days. I stopped asking, do I have time to build something? And I started asking, what am I willing to stop doing so I can make time? That is a much more honest question. Maybe it means watching less TV, right? Maybe it means getting up a little earlier. Maybe it means turning off the phone for a while. Maybe it means saying no to something that is not moving your life forward. You do not need to completely change your schedule overnight. You just need to protect a small part of it. 2 focused hours, and those 2 focused hours do not have to be perfect. Some days you will feel motivated, some days you will not. Some days things will go well. The other days, it may feel like you've accomplished almost nothing. Look, that is normal. The important part is showing up because commitment matters more than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Commitment is what keeps you moving when the excitement wears off. And that is what building a business taught me. You do not need to be the smartest person. You do not need to understand every piece of technology. You do not need a huge following, okay? You need to be willing to learn to follow a proven process and stay consistent long enough to improve. That is what 2 hours gave me. It gave me space to become a beginner again. It gave me time to make mistakes. It gave me time to learn new skills. And most importantly, it gave me a way to begin building something that belongs to me, something that could continue working when I was not, right? Something that could give me more choices in the future. That is why I say 2 focus hours a day changed my life. It was not only about the business, it was about finally keeping a promise to myself. So let me ask you, what could change in your life if you gave your future 2 focused hours a day? Not forever. Start with the next 30 days. Protect the time. Learn something new. Build something small and see who you become. When you stop putting yourself at the bottom of your own list, if you're ready to see what I've been building, go click the link in my profile, okay? Put your email in, watch the videos, and I will send you our 10K and 30-day blueprint absolutely free. And remember this, guys, if you're tired of always being on, it's time to build something that works when you don't. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.